A pleasure to meet y'all at last, and welcome back once again to Video Games That Are Totally Awesome, where I am going to, in fact, take you around to a point that I've kind of already gone through. Because in HDN Super Graphics, you know what I did? I talked a bit about Batman Return to Arkham. It's little more than a remastering of Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. But I feel like in this case, what I might as well do is cover the entirety of the Arkham series as it currently stands. You have Arkham Asylum in 2009, 2011's Arkham City, 2013's Arkham Origins, and finally 2015's Arkham Knight. So of course, there's no better way to start than with Arkham Asylum. Joker gets taken into custody by Batman to a place known as Arkham Island. It contains a specialized asylum which was in fact made by the one and only Amadeus Arkham. He founded and built this fine institution as a means of specifically harboring the many supercriminals that have been known for terrorizing and wreaking havoc amongst Gotham City. And it's a bleak place with a lot of horrors, drama, tragedy, and even laughs. As the Joker himself would put it, it's good to be back. Because this was in fact a long time coming. You see, this was technically a planned thing all along. For him to get captured by Batman and put in Arkham, it allows for this plan of his to be set in motion. And of course, with many others that have watched along, like Harley Quinn for instance, who many consider to be Joker's best gal, partner in crime, per literary stance. But, you know what though? This was certainly something that Joker practically put together, possibly for months on end. Because we're not just dealing with Joker here, or Harley, but there's also Victor Zsasz, for instance, whom takes a guard hostage and threatens to electrocute him until you utilize your stealth capabilities, drop down on him, take him down, and then move on towards a gas-filled room. Joker's infamous Venom, a laughing gas cocktail that's basically meant to kill people by way of extreme laughter that's uncontrollable. It's especially infamous for contorting their muscles so that a permanent smile is erected. And boy, is it gnarly. Oh, but of course, you can't get the vents up and running again with a simple hit of the Batarang. And we definitely can't forget, Batman's able to help up 2 guards and an inmate, whom he knocks out right after. Kinda makes you wonder, why even help? Anyways though, we're made to go forward, as eventually we do catch up to the Joker, a place that is dubbed Extreme Isolation. Transport cells basically whisk away prisoners into some sort of isolated segment of the building. But Joker does actually use this system as a means to seal himself off and prevent Batman from getting closer to him. Meanwhile, there is a video that gets sent in Batman's direction. And apparently, the Joker has gotten a hold of Commissioner Jim Gordon. It turns out that one of the most loyal guards of Arkham, Frank Bowles, I mean, this is the same guy that we just saw a little while ago. I mean, he was there helping to get Joker back into his cell, you know? But for real though, we definitely can't get any further without talking about the real fiscal bits of things. It's not just the fact that Jim Gordon is being held hostage by the likes of Joker, Bowles, Harley, etc. But now, we know that the one and only Oracle, Barbara Gordon, whom of course is Jim's daughter, she is able to communicate with Batman in many different ways and provide a lot of insight on things. And I tell you what, the many conversations the two harbor with each other is rather unique. It's a unique bond that the two share. Not exactly of romantic stuff, because how could Batman possibly have time for that? But then of course we go in further into the game where we eventually make our way outside of the asylum. Yep, we make our way outside. A makeshift Batcave, believe it or not, is in this game. And it's essentially what Batman refers to as a home away from home. I mean, he's got just as much equipment there and technology in that place as he did in his old Batcave back in Gotham. Of course, he uses this place specifically to conduct some, well, research, if you will. But we definitely cannot talk about the game much further without discussing some of the bosses. There, of course, was Bane, whom we fight in the boiler room shortly after rescuing Gordon from the clutches of Harley. And then, of course, we do get to face more enemies as time goes on. I mean, it was one thing where Joker sent along a heavily modified inmate after Batman, but we do get to see more of this sort of action later on. Because what happens here is that the Joker's main point of his plan, other than the threats of detonating bombs all over Gotham if anybody set foot on Arkham Island, is of course to steal a certain recipe from somebody. It's essentially some sort of compound, a formula that was made by the one and only Dr. Penelope Young. And she apparently had been responsible for experimenting on Bane, essentially draining all of the venom that was in his body. So you can imagine how horrified Bane was at all this. And he wanted to enact revenge on Young. But Joker was just as interested in the cocktail that Young had been working with. Using Bane as the guinea pig and all this practically emboldened the Joker a little bit more in a way that was pretty much bad news for the Batman and anyone else at Arkham at the time. But hey, we definitely got to talk about how Batman eventually does find the formula and destroys it. Yeah, he ends up going into a small library. Some guards were held hostage, inmates are nearby, and thankfully Batman is able to disarm a gas bomb, preventing anybody from getting hurt or killed. So of course, we are, believe it or not, in a bit of a perpetual state. And this state in particular is actually the second out of third encounters with the one and only Scarecrow. Yeah, might as well mention that because on the way to rescuing Jim Gordon, we do encounter Scarecrow for the first time. Batman believed that Jim was dead, and the gas in particular that Crane used against Batman at the time, after going through the medical ward, it was pretty horrifying, you know. A true nightmare that Scarecrow had set up. A large set of fear, enlarging himself, but practically making himself an easier target for the Batman. And then of course with the second one, it becomes just as challenging. The thing is, with all of these Scarecrow encounters, they did ramp up the difficulty as well as how long it would take to potentially make our way through all of these different nightmare situations that the Batman ends up in. But the second one comes and goes, and we once again encounter Victor Zsasz holding Dr. Young hostage. And even after rescuing Young, they're still not out of trouble just yet. A terminal is located inside the warden's office, and unfortunately, it's riddled with an explosive. Young is killed in the blast. Batman barely lives through it, and even when he comes to though, it turns out the warden was also kidnapped by Harley and her henchmen. These many goons that apparently were ex-Blackgate prisoners transferred to Arkham were basically now just more pawns for the Joker to work with. All of his henchmen coming from Blackgate seems quite interesting when you look at it any which way. But I certainly do have to comment on the fact they've certainly managed to ramp up the difficulty, not just with the Scarecrow encounters or whatnot, but we do get much more things to work with regarding the gameplay itself. Because especially when we're on the move in between buildings in different locations that we're supposed to go to, the Joker is ready for us. There's a part where the armory, of course, was invaded by the thugs, and they got their hands on sniper rifles. Yeah, it was kind of bad enough when they could get their hands on regular guns. as a whole. But man, now that they have snipers, it can be quite challenging. And these snipers can certainly drain out a good fraction of your health, which does make it tough to get through. Batman gets stunned with every single hit that he takes. So let's say if you're trying to get close enough to take these guys down, it's probably better to use the Batarang or Bat Claw against them in case it gets a bit hairy to the point where you're critical in health. Also, there is of course a progression system in mind where you can have access to different upgrades. There's armor upgrades, a remote control Batarang add-on, a few different mods for other gadgets that Batman's known to use, including a multi-Batarang, and many others. So you do get a variety of different things to put together here, making this a bit on the RPG side of things. And this would also become a recurring role even in the later Batman Arkham games. But anyways though, you do make your way over to where the Warden is. And this whole place is riddled with a bunch of lunatics. And man, the scary music in the background really does heighten the likability of how much more dangerous these guys are in comparison. But hey, you know what? Even when you do rescue the Warden, you're still not out of the blue just yet. Not exactly out of danger. You still have Harley herself to face against. Oh, but after defeating all of her thugs, she herself comes out, but it's just a cutscene. You don't exactly fight her. Quite literally even. Instead, it's just a simple takedown for Batman. He eventually is able to find out that the location of this secret lab of the Joker is where he's working on the Venom formula that Dr. Young was working on, was apparently in the gardens. Yeah. So now he has to go to the botanical gardens at Arkham to find potentially not only Poison Ivy, whom was just released by Harley a little while ago, but also this lab in particular that Joker is working on the Venom itself. This sort of thing has officially been dubbed as Project Titan. And knowing that Bane himself had run on Venom for a pretty long time, and even had his own storage tank to take along with him, it could certainly prove to be dangerous. Knowing that one Bane was already enough, knowing that we already fought him earlier in the game, but Titan enhanced inmates, creating more Banes, you know, that's seemingly the ultimate plan for the Joker all along. We're not just dealing with some average stuff that a criminal would possibly pull off. No, the Joker is actually doing so much more than you'd ever think of. And it's pretty horrifying, to say the least. It's going to be a nightmare beyond all nightmares. And speaking of which, we, believe it or not, are able to, in fact, get up towards good old Joker after some scouring around in the gardens themselves, some puzzle solving as well as some backtracking. We find the secret lab itself. And man, it's well concealed. This secret entrance in particular does give us the lab location, and when we finally go in there, we're unfortunately too late. Joker has manufactured enough of this Titan not only to inject 2 darts worth into test subjects nearby, but these guys fight Batman as Titan enhanced inmates. And it's an exhilarating way to go. You're basically fighting 2 bosses at once. But at least here we got ourselves a recognizable pattern, as well as some good ways to avoid them. We could stun them with the Batarang, causing them to be blindsided, and they run into the walls, where we can then hop on top of them, and eventually we're able to beat them up. It will get to the point where we do eventually defeat the 2, but then Batman calls on the Batwing to have another gadget delivered, the Line Launcher. This one's another popular piece of the Arkham series. He's able to jump through the gap easily after that bridge was disabled by the Joker, but then he would make his way back to where he eventually has a little talk with Ivy herself, whom is in another room of the building. She of course tells him about how Killer Croc supposedly has certain spores that could very well be helpful in providing an antidote against this Titan. So Batman's off to go there. He does have a few chats with Aaron Cash, one of the guards, back at the mansion. And knowing that Poison Ivy has had her own little reign at the same time Joker's got his, means we're not just dealing with Joker here, but also Ivy. Because her plans just sprawl all over the place. Anyways, though, heading over to a transfer room, an elevator that takes us down to a deep sewer, we do eventually make one last contact with the Scarecrow. Yeah, this one is pretty lengthy in comparison. And there's even a few times where the Joker actually injects extra toxins into him. But man, oh man, Batman true is the Dark Knight. He truly is Vengeance, the Knight, Batman. Because he really does persevere through all of that stuff that he's been injected with. Scarecrow, of course, is actually defeated, not by Batman, but by Killer Croc. Yeah, because just when you think that the bag full of Scarecrow's own fear toxin can be dumped into the river, yeah, it's basically a whole network of different complex ideologies coming from all the different characters. I mean, it was one thing where we had Batman wanting to enact revenge on Batman with Bane, but then of course we have Poison Ivy and her plans sprawling all over Arkham, and Joker's practically working together with her and, you know, using Titan as a means to really amplify her power. Yeah, it really gets to the point where this mission with Killer Croc might sound like complete suicide, even as Oracle points it out, but Batman knows he has to do this. He of course settles down into these old catacombs, goes onto the pontoons in which he's able to collect the spores while avoiding Killer Croc at the same time. And man, the fight and the musical scores really are intense. Croc is definitely an incredible being of raw power and true ferocious animalistic instinct. But once we do make it out of there, even as the floor is blown up with some explosive gel, we're able to make our way back up to the Batcave, where we can then work on the solution itself. This antidote to the Titan, unfortunately, isn't quite enough to basically make everything go away, but it'll at least help with Batman's current problems. He does intend on using the Titan antidote for the plants mostly, but also in helping to prevent more Titan-related atrocities from occurring. Unfortunately, Ivy's plants enter the Batcave, and with some quick thinking, Batman is able to upgrade his Batclaw to allow for entire walls to be brought down. So not just little surfaces, including vents. Of course, Batman is able to make his way through even more trouble. There, of course, are some collars that we had seen before, called suicide collars. They activate whenever an inmate is unconscious. Yeah, quite a nifty trick. It tends to gather a lot more attention than you'd expect, forcing Batman to really amplify his hiding skills. And then, of course, there's also other things that will be introduced in the later Arkham games. But till then, with Arkham Asylum, Batman gets up to fighting against Ivy, defeating her, making his way out, and finally, the moment we've been waiting for, a grand party in which that Batman's invited to. So he makes his way over to the party itself, and you see, it's all a first-person movement. But Joker appears on the TV, turns out to be not only on the TV, but also holding the TV on his head, which is a pretty funny gag, if you will. But turns out there's also explosives ladled to it. And unfortunately, it's a pretty big one. And while Batman's basically able to come out with some tinnitus ringing in the ears, he eventually does head forward to meet the Joker, as well as some more Titan-enhanced inmates, and regular inmates as well. Then, of course, there is the puppet Scarface. Yeah. Of course, one last battle ends up taking place. You got all of these different thugs that Batman's fighting against. Thugs that are armed, thugs that are unarmed, the Titan enhanced thugs that are always charging around, slapping around and stuff. But man, it's a great battle. But it's actually just a warm-up for what we consider to be the true final battle. Jim Gordon is revealed to have been captured again and is basically revealed to be the prize. Joker attempts to put Titan in him, but Batman blocks it and takes on the Venom himself. But he actually is resistant to the change. So, talk about him really improving his will like you've never seen before. Of course, Joker gets mad about it, and that's just a culmination of all the plans of his just really going to waste. Even after months of time, all these plans of his are basically being foiled by the one and only Dark Knight himself, like anything would. Of course, Joker had no other choice but to turn it on himself, put the Titan in himself. When he wakes up, he becomes an incredible monster. And I tell you what, the Titan enhanced Joker was really something. He's all muscular, has long claws, a giant mohawk on his head. It's like everything you could possibly hope for. But hey, this final battle here, with Jim being the so-called referee in an electric chair, yeah, I don't know how that's funny enough. But there's even the appearance of Jack Ryder, the news reporter from the helicopter, coming around to see Batman and the new Titan-enhanced Joker up on the rooftop, engaging in a final battle. And it is one for the ages here, because we are dealing with a ferocious threat that might as well be equivalent to Bane, if not more so fearsome than he is. Of course, with Titan-enhanced Joker, he is easy to defeat. You just simply gotta grapple onto him with your tri-bat claw, or three-way bat claw as some might put it, and drag him down. His nails will get stuck to the floor, and then you can easily lay out some punches. All it takes is basically 3 rounds of this process. And when we finally make it happen, he falls through the floor this time rather than just getting stuck in it, getting zapped. When he comes back out, while Batman had unfortunately wasted the antidote on himself, he does have a backup plan. Putting some explosive gel on his glove, he's able to deliver an explosive punch to the Titan-enhanced Joker's face, knocking him out cold and winning the day. Just like that, we have history truly made as a special 2009 edition Game of the Year. Forces are able to come in, apprehend all the criminals, including the Joker himself, and well, as Jim Gordon explains it, everybody's back in custody. Venom enhancements are slowly reducing until normalcy is reached, and then of course, he himself is all okay. Able to talk to Barbara Gordon about everything that happened and what he intends to do next. Batman, of course, is offered a ride from Gordon, but has himself one, the Batwing. And right on time too, because, wouldn't you know, Two-Face is basically robbing the Gotham Bank. And that's basically a good way to cliffhang. Because while technically we don't exactly follow up on it by way of chasing after Two-Face after he robbed the bank, we do at least have Two-Face as one of a few main villains to fight against in Arkham City, which came out 2 years later. In any case though, after the credits roll, we are at least treated to a unique end credits scene, where one of 3 villains will get a hold of the last creative Titan floating in the water. There's Bane, Killer Croc, or Scarecrow. As far as my knowledge though, this is morally just a randomizer effect, where any of these cutscenes will show up at random. There's not exactly a pattern to it or whatnot. It's just morally of a random choice that goes on every time you replay through the whole game. And I'll say, while neither of these unfortunately have come together because we don't see a Titan-enhanced Bane or Titan-enhanced Killer Croc or Scarecrow in Arkham City, it was at least a good way to cliffhang with us, much like with Two-Face in the bank. So, while nothing exactly followed up truly after Arkham Asylum like that, Arkham City at least did something quite a ways different. But we'll get to that tomorrow. For my overall scoring on Batman Arkham Asylum, I would say that much like with HJN, I would be willing to give it a pretty high score. But the scoring that I gave for Return to Arkham is more of the game itself. For Arkham Asylum, individually speaking, I'll be willing to give so much as a 9.1 out of 10.1, which I consider to be truly satisfying. Not exactly perfect as it is, but still does offer a lot of replay value to it. Because amongst the many things that we get to play here, the many exploration tactics, the RPG elements, locations, boss battles, fighting sequences, combat, gadgets, as well as the many different collectibles. Yeah, there of course is the Spirit of Arkham, which is basically a set of crypts along Arkham Island, that we can decipher and hear some old messages. And then of course there's also taped patient interviews with various characters, including the Joker, Harley Quinn, Killer Croc, the Scarecrow, etc. But of course, it's not just about the characters in which that are interviewed, but there's also a good list of the characters in general. We don't just get the characters that we see in the game, but also ones that are outside. There's also Clayface, Mr. Freeze, Penguin, Tweedledum and Tweedledee, Prometheus, and many others. Even the ones that are more obscured have a special appearance in this game, mostly as a means of collectability, you know. But hey, for tomorrow, I will be talking about Batman Arkham City as more of the individual standpoint, rather than also referring back to Batman Return to Arkham like I did with HJN Super Graphics some time ago.